Hey, well today I'm angry at Alexander Vindman. And if you don't know who that is or don't remember who that is, this is a picture of him that may remind you. This is Alexander Vindman, Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, as he's about to testify before Congress at the end of last year. And what is he testifying about? He is testifying that he does not agree with a phone call that President Trump had with the newly elected president of the Ukraine. Alexander Vindman is a guy who actually immigrated from the Ukraine when he was a boy and had been in charge of the Eurasian desk, which explains his interest in the region. Now, Alexander Vindman has his opinions of how things should be between the West and Ukraine, and I will point out that the attitude towards the Ukraine has changed since Obama and Biden ran things. I need hardly remind you that Joe Biden and Ukraine is a tortured can of worms that we don't even have to go into now, but certainly when Donald Trump was elected, he was very interested in corruption in Ukraine, especially since Joe Biden had boasted that he had gotten a special prosecutor who was investigating corruption in Ukraine fired. How does Vindman relate to all of this? Well, Vindman was with the National Security Council. He had been sent by the army to be part of the National Security Council, and he did not appreciate the fact that Trump was not kowtowing to the Obama-Biden line regarding Ukraine. Now, Ukraine is a contentious issue that many people have opinions of, but the short story is that Ukraine was a satellite state of Russia until a couple of decades ago when Gorbachev let the satellite states free. It had remained a satellite state of Russia. As a matter of fact, Crimea, part of Ukraine at the time, was Russia's only access to the Black Sea, its only southern port. So Ukraine was very important to Russia, and when the West fostered a coup in Ukraine that saw the pro-Russian leader booted out and a pro-Western guy put in, Russia was understandably concerned about losing its only warm water port. Russia, hurriedly called a referendum, and Crimea, which I think was 90+% Russian in origin, they voted by referendum to join Russia. Russia seized Crimea. This has caused all kinds of problems. The US did not appreciate at all the fact that Russia had outmaneuvered them, and it's been a big problem ever since. Trump's interest in Ukraine was because Ukraine has been notoriously corrupt, and a special prosecutor in Ukraine that was investigating corruption was fired on Joe Biden's orders. This is not my taking anybody's statement at its word. This is Joe Biden's claim. You can find video, and I'll link to it below, where Joe Biden on stage is proudly proclaiming that he got this special prosecutor fired, who was investigating the company that Joe Biden's son worked for, Hunter Biden. Now, we don't have to go into the details of whether Hunter Biden and Joe Biden are corrupt or not. That's a subject for another day, and I'm sure many people will be covering it at length in days to come. What we're talking about today is this guy, Alexander Vindman. Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman. Now, Alexander Vindman did not like what Trump's perspective on Ukraine was, and he reported it as suspicious. And my concern is that the president, whether it's Obama, Reagan, Clinton, Bush, or Trump, the president sets foreign policy. Now, theoretically, the Congress has to declare war, but this is an obligation that's been ignored more frequently than it's been obeyed in recent times, especially in the last 2 decades. Alexander Vindman did not like the foreign policy that Donald Trump was pursuing with Ukraine, and so he complained about it. He considered it inappropriate that Donald Trump would ask Ukraine to investigate corruption. Why is investigating corruption something to be upset about? What is wrong with investigating corruption? You can describe it as digging up political dirt on your opponents, but that's if your opponents have dirt. If they are dirty, in other words. If there's nothing to find out, then there's nothing to investigate. Alexander Vindman's issue is that he did not agree with Trump that Ukraine should be let alone. He wanted to pursue Obama and Biden's policies. We elect the president. We elect senators. We elect congressmen. We did not elect Alexander Vindman. Nobody cares what Alexander Vindman's opinion is, except the enemies of Donald Trump do care about anything negative that anybody has to say about Trump. This is the only reason Alexander Vindman's opinion is being given any weight at all. He is a functionary. He is a lieutenant colonel, which is not as high a rank as you might think. This is a guy who had sworn allegiance and obedience to the commander-in-chief. As part of the army, he was supposed to be loyal to Donald Trump. He was not. He let his own personal opinions interfere. This is wrong. It doesn't matter if Donald Trump is president or Obama is president. These career functionaries in the government should not be allowed to interfere. They're entitled to have opinions, of course they are. But if they disagree with the stated position of their commander-in-chief, their options are either to obey the orders or to resign. They don't get to speak publicly and comment upon the decisions being made by our elected officials. And Alexander Vindman is just the latest example of what I would call the deep state, which is the government, the status quo, the vested interests determined that they are the ones who decide our course, not the president, who actually has responsibility for foreign policy. Alexander Vindman has disgraced himself and the uniform, and nobody should care what his personal opinions are. It's time to say goodbye to this chump. Let's wake up.